All right, well, yes, a busy session. When Peter and Greg and I were planning the conference, we knew that programmatic was going to come up, threaded throughout the different discussions. And we wanted to have at least one session where we kind of focused on it. And I kind of was volunteered to do the programmatic part of it. And so how do you do that? Programmatic is so pervasive, so complicated, so ambiguous. There's a lot of different moving parts to it. So my basic solution was to think of the smartest people I knew and see how many of those I could get to come and share their viewpoints and information around programmatic. So that's the busy part of this. Over the next hour or so, we're going to talk about programmatic, and the format here is sort of conversations. Generally talking about the idea of programmatic ad buying gets into this national into local space. So we'll have a series of conversations. Generally on that theme, 3 different conversations. We'll have 3 people come up for each panel, so there'll be kind of people moving back and forth. And the way I wanted to do this was to have it be conversational rather than PowerPoints and presentations. But I did invite each of the speakers, because decks are nice. Sometimes a presentation is nicer if it's more lively and conversational. So the best of both worlds. I invited each of the speakers to have a deck. So when you go to the virtual conference site, you'll see for most of the speakers, they'll have a deck associated with their name. So download those. So there's a lot more to the story than we're going to be able to cover in the hour or so we have in the panel today. So 3 conversations, speaker decks will be available as we get them. We've got a bunch already, so if you go to the virtual site, you'll see that. And then we're going to have a forthcoming report on programmatic and local, and that will actually end up being a series of reports because it's a pretty interesting and fast-moving space. So what is programmatic advertising? The answer is manyfold, as you'll hear shortly. And so one of my approaches to this was, let me put it into a search window and see what kind of things are out there. So this will start the journey as to what is programmatic. Wikipedia seems like an interesting first stop. So what is programmatic? The term programmatic media, also known as programmatic marketing, encompasses an array of technologies that automate the buying, placement, and optimization of media inventory, in turn replacing human-based methods. We don't need those messy humans. They complain and they make mistakes. Let's automate everything. In this process, supply and demand partners utilize automated systems and business rules to place advertisements in electronically targeted media inventory. Okay? It has been suggested that programmatic buying is a fast-growing phenomenon in the global media and advertising industry. So I don't know, maybe that's true. We'll see about that. Certainly faster in other parts of it, as Mike Boland said yesterday. What we're calling programmatic or automated exchanges grew in large part out of learnings from the search industry over the past decade even. So some of that has conveyed into programmatic, but programmatic now, I mean, here in this room, means something totally different than kind of its DNA coming out of search. Hit first in display, now it's going into a lot of different media types. I'm not so sure about replacing human-based methods, maybe in part, but maybe augmenting them in other ways. So what is programmatic? It's kind of in the eye of the beholder, but there are some sort of constant factors, and we'll talk about that in this series of conversations and hopefully get some input from the audience too. But most people would probably say there's sort of a demand side and a supply side. So this is one kind of graphic that represents that. You have media companies, they have inventory that they would like to sell to advertisers. So there's a way to get to that inventory, human-based, and now with automated platforms that have various kinds of intelligence and agents that are at work there. So on the supply side, you've got publisher, please buy our inventory, and we have direct sellers, we have channel sellers, and now we have programmatic and automated marketplaces to go into the SSP, the supply side platform. On the demand side, you've got actual companies that would like to advertise that work through media agencies, and they might work with ad agencies, with trading desks that place buy orders into the ether of programmatic, and that's sort of the demand side. So the kind of minimum configuration is you have people selling inventory, people buying inventory, and then one representation of this is that kind of egg-shaped oval thing. And then there's another part that's missing from this picture, which is what's programmatic. It's attribution, it's targeting, it's retargeting, it's all different kinds of things. So the data really adds to that targeting element to it. So a lot of times programmatic will have DMP, data management platforms in the mix too. So a little bit, another capture from my little journey around the World Wide Web. So you have the sell side, the buy side. Let's make it a little bit more complicated. You have the consumer. Consumer interacts with the publisher somehow and sees the ads, we hope. That's what this is all about, ad networks. Publisher ad server, supply side server, real-time bidding server, a data broker. So it starts to get a little bit more complicated here. And the notion here is that the publishers say, so we have inventory, we can set up our own exchanges, private exchanges, and have reserved inventory or guaranteed inventory or direct kind of inventory. So we can actually have direct sellers out there, and we can automate part of the workflow so they can spend more of their time establishing value propositions with the clients. So the sell side can talk directly to the buy side and have their own kind of exchanges. They can put some inventory into the kind of exchange of exchanges. We have the internet, the network of networks, and then programmatic is sort of the exchange of exchanges. Then the buy side gets a little more complicated. Advertisers talks to the trading desks, different networks. You have ad servers on the demand side. You have ad servers on the supply side. So they start to look like each other. So everything's happening everywhere. And in this graphic, you see data added in there. And that's really two big things about, I think, programmatic. The data really informs both the buy side and sell side process. Adds a lot of value to inventory, targeting audience segments really, really efficiently. And then the programmatic part of it also ties into the automated workflow, which really amplifies what people can do. So unlike the Wikipedia kind of definition where it replaces humans, maybe to some extent, but it also makes humans more powerful, which I think is a pretty good part of the story. So who is programmatic? The lovely Lumascape. It's not a real market space unless you have a Lumascape picture. So it's my goal was to invite everybody that had a logo here up here, but I can only get 9 people. No, just kidding. There's a lot of different things going on here. Lumascapes are always fun to represent, kind of visually, a bunch of logos, what's going on. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, a lot of roles and responsibilities, and that's kind of what we're going to get into. For those who follow what IAB has been doing, they've been doing a lot of work over the past couple of years in programmatic. So I'll just highlight a couple of things. We're going to be using some terms up here, and we'll have the speakers kind of define those. Sometimes they're a little bit ambiguous, or people use them in different contexts. But to set the stage a little bit from a programmatic perspective, IAB recommended some standardization in terms, so we think we know what we're talking about a little bit better. So a couple of different kinds of things going on here. Automated guaranteed, unreserved fixed rate, invitation-only auction, and open auction. And basically, you've got the supply side, the publishers with inventory, and the demand side, people who would like to have advertising, and how they talk to each other. So here's one set of words at IAB, so let's kind of talk about this. So what does that mean? You have inventory. You can have reserved inventory, unreserved inventory. We'll get into that a little bit. Pricing, it's reserved pricing, it's fixed pricing, it's auction, kind of like AdWords. You go out there and you bid for words and see what happens. Who can participate in my programmatic exchange, my platform? One-to-one, one-to-one, one-to-few. You're in the club or you're not, or only you are allowed to access this part of the inventory, or the open auction that's out there. And that's kind of some of the perception of programmatic is it's from a publisher perspective, it's remnant inventory. So it's like, we're not going to sell this anyway. We'll just put it out there. And if we make any money, great. We'll take the incremental revenue. Automated guaranteed. Everybody knows what that means. Not really, because other terms used in the market. It's also called programmatic guaranteed, programmatic premium, programmatic direct, programmatic reserved. Unreserved fixed rate, preferred deals, private access, first right of refusal. Invitation only, private marketplace, private auction, closed auction, private class, or private access. And open auction, real-time bidding, RTB, finally shows up here, which is some people use as synonymous with programmatic, which is not really the case. Open exchange, open marketplace. So that's the kind of stuff we'll get into a little bit in here. And how is the pricing set? It's not always a bidding process. Sometimes, kind of graphically, what was just shown in that IAB chart, I'm only going to invite certain people in to take a look at what's going on here. And that could be fixed price or negotiated price or just, I'll take the best offer kind of thing. So a couple of data points that are out there in my little journey through the World Wide Web. Integral Ad Science had a study that they released at the end of last year in December. Where is programmatic going to grow most? Areas that will experience the greatest growth this year, according to digital media buyers and suppliers. Video, programmatic video is number one. 27% of the respondents say that's where programmatic's really going to hit this year, 2015. So it has been display historically, and before that, kind of the prehistory of programmatic is search. Mobile. So video and mobile, two huge growth areas. And then programmatic high impact. Using the data, we can target it much better, get much better conversion rates, whatever the KPIs are. Attribution model. How does my spend work? I mean, programmatic can help me understand that a little bit better. So attribution is really an important area for growth in programmatic. And then time-based metrics. I mean, the journey to purchase, the funnel, how do I understand that a little bit better? And then marketing cloud services, whatever that means. 3% marketing as a service, that's going to experience the growth too. For digital display ad spending, and that's only one of the inventory types, mobile and video, obviously going to show high growth, but just looking at display, the study that came out there, this is, I think, Frost, your study, right, that you did. Programmatic display advertising, real-time bidding. People think that's kind of synonymous with programmatic. 2013, $4.16 billion. Speed ahead to a couple years, it's going to be $11.84 billion. So real-time bidding, that's a big part of the market. The programmatic direct, I'm just going to automate the workflow. It's not going to be real-time bidding. I'm just going to use it somehow to automate or semi-automate the workflow. It's sort of nowhere in 2013, grew by 10x from 0.08 to $0.8 billion. This year, looks like it's going to be approaching $4 billion and then more than doubling by 2016. So the programmatic direct, as a publisher, start to say, you know what, we'll open up some of that reserved inventory, some of that premium inventory. We're not just going to play with the remnant. We're actually going to open this up and see what happens. We think we can have enough control over the process that we can drive incremental dollars and do better jobs for our clients with the data layer from the DMPs to drive better results overall. What are local advertisers looking for? Sorry, this is the Simplify study. What are they looking for? So Frost Prelow sponsored this study, targeting and retargeting to increase conversions. I mean, so get the message out. I would like to get the message to them again, and particularly cross-screen. Maybe hit them in a display ad. I'd like to get them on their mobile. And if I have video as an ad type, higher engagement. Nice. Search and site retargeting. Cross-device, really critical to the extent we can map into digital IDs on mobile devices. We'll hear a little about that from the panel. And then just follow the user through their journey, through their purchase process. So that's kind of a setup for programmatic. It's a very quick overview of a lot of the moving parts and pieces. There's more, and there's a lot of depth for each of these. So what we're going to do now is invite up the first panel, Lorne Brown, who is CEO of Operative, David Carberry, CEO of Enradius, and David Oliveira, who is CEO of Balihoo. And each have different parts and roles of this ecosystem around, sorry, I'm blocking the space here, around programmatic. So I invite you up and then don't let you by. So let's go ahead and start the discussion. And let me first invite you each to talk a little bit about your company and kind of how you, well, if you want your definition of programmatic, but how you fit into this programmatic thing we're talking about, and with a kind of flavor towards the national and to local theme that we're doing in a conference. So we'll just start with you, Lorne.
Sure, sounds good. We were just talking, we think we should debate the number of words and stats that are available for programmatic and just spend a lot of time there.
Right.
So Operative helps publishers, media companies, by providing an ad sales operating system to help them enable to sell more effectively and more efficiently. And our clients are publishers, and we're a pure SaaS company, so we don't make money on the buying and selling of media. And so publisher profitability is our core, that's our mantra, that's what we care about. And just as I was reading the Wikipedia definition, you used the word phenomena, which I don't know that I would actually use to define programmatic, because to me, and some people might not like this, but programmatic is really a glorified ad rep firm, if you think about it. And ad rep firms have been around for a while, because what's programmatic? Well, it's a third party that you're using to help you drive revenue, and they're sharing a cut. of the revenue that you make. And, that's been around for a long time, but the way we look at the world is that a publisher has products that they sell. They have an inventory pool that they have, which is made up of content, data, and targeting. And they have ad sales people that are trying to get after that data and those inventory products. But they also have machines who are also trying to get after those products, inventory, and data. And so a programmatic entity is really no different than a salesperson. And the most important thing we have to solve for, and I think media companies need to solve for, is that there's one single yield curve, and it has to be managed as a single yield curve. And going forward, that's the most important thing, because right now they're very disparate, they're separate, there's a lot of infighting inside of media companies and uncertainty about how to deal with that, and that's something that I think we're still at the very beginning of this evolution as it starts to move forward.
Makes sense. Dave?
So Enradius is a geo-targeted marketing company. We are on the buying side, so we're more of a media agency working with clients, and we primarily work with the SMB side. And then we also do have some publisher side too, so we'll go in and work with local sites that really don't understand how to get onto some of the ad network side. So like radio stations, different publications that are out there, and then we just get the information, gather the information, and help their sales reps actually go out and sell it. But you bring up a great point just in regards to the reps that are out there. I mean, there are so many sales reps out in these local markets now selling programmatic, and that's one of the frustrating things that we've seen is when you have a lot of these small businesses that are just curious about what programmatic is, how to buy media, how do you do display, what are these units. You've got CBS Radio in the marketplace, you've got Hearst, you've got Scripps, you've got YP. They're all going out, and there's hundreds and hundreds of reps trying to explain programmatic. So
You said 38, I think, this morning.
Right, yeah,
38
exactly.
reps per franchise per month.
Or 38 overall, calling on small businesses.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's crazy. So it's one of those things that we go out and try to help educate clients on the client side about that.
Right.
That was great. I started out as a sales guy. I was one of the 38, so I thought I'd get in the software business. So it seemed
call.
like, and I thought local made sense as the redheaded stepchild. I think, Dave, I don't know where you're at. I felt very comfortable representing the redheaded stepchild of local. So Balihoo is a national to local software automation platform. We're a SaaS business. We don't take margin. And we're absolutely building tools and we define programmatic as truly automation. So we're building tools to provide the national brand the ability to market on behalf of their location. And we really are excited about the ability to leverage the data that the brand knows about their location and make that scalable across all the different channels that are automated, programmatic, so they can do multi-channel integrated marketing across that location level.
So if we think about the title of this segment, New Automation of Media's Impact on Local Markets, what's new about this? Is it really just kind of the technology that comes out of search and AdWords biddings from over the past decade even, or is there something actually new going on here?
Well, I think I'll start. I think the new thing here is that we've just really, I agree that it is kind of like there is an ad rep, or we've automated it, we've taken the person out of it who's actually making the bid buy. So I think that's fundamentally different. There's definitely...
But a lot of people in the room would argue that the person is not out of it. And I talked to a few people this morning where, their sellers spend a lot of time with advertisers convincing them to buy. They wind up buying programmatically. They don't get commissioned on it. And that creates a lot of issues. And if they're using a third-party rep firm that does programmatic and they take them to dinner and do all these other things, well, then if they're not going to make money on it, then they're going to stop doing it. And I think that's a fundamental issue.
Yeah.
And the other issue is the 20% plus minus that everyone's charging as a cut of the revenue, which really makes it so you can't afford a commission, right? And so how long is that going to last?
Well, not long. Most sales guys are getting out of that business, right? I mean, they're getting out of hey, I'm representing X, Y, Z. The smart sellers are helping educate on how to take advantage of the solutions, and then making sure that they're using. But yeah, we've seen flight of sales folks. I think the reality is that local's hard enough. right? I mean, doing this at national, trying to figure out the boxes and all that is hard enough in the Lumascape. When you add the complexity of local to it, that just adds to it. But I think with data and the advent of these tools, there's a chance to make it really scalable for the local business, and I think that's what's changed.
And that's kind of the thing for local. It is complex, and so a lot of money there in the aggregate, but it's in tiny bites. If there's some way we can make that efficient at scale, and that's kind of the automation and the technology we're talking about. So one of the things you said about people are getting out of it, the Wikipedia has taught us that programmatic and automation means, bye-bye people. Is that an outcome here, or are people being used differently? Where do people go in this equation?
They're being used differently, right? So I started out, I worked at Yahoo and I worked in the sales organization on the national side. And I talked to buddies who are looking for sales jobs, and they're moving to represent the DMP, the DSP. They're representing the technologies as opposed to always representing the media company themselves. So I think we've seen a shift in the skill sets that they're bringing, being a little bit more tech savvy. But I think, Lorne, you probably have a really good perspective on that as well.
Yeah, well, we're really early in the process of figuring out what people are going to do with programmatic, nationally and locally, right? And the uses are very, very different. And if you look at just some of the BIAKelsey slides about the sheer number of products that are sold locally, every single product they're starting to evolve with some programmatic single-strung way to buy it, right? And natives now, and what's next, right? And so before we know it, we're going to have 40 different programmatic SSPs trying to buy inventory in a single-strung type way. But that's also a huge opportunity, right? It's a huge opportunity for media companies that can aggregate their supply chain, make it easy for sellers to go out and give something to someone that they can't get anywhere else. And that's why people will pay a higher CPM from a salesperson at a firm like a McClatchy or an Advanced, because they know they're getting premium ad products, they know they're getting it across screens, across platforms, and you can't get that today with programmatic. And I think you'll find that the other thing that's happening, and we're seeing it, is how do local media companies go after national dollars, right? And that's the goal for everyone, and that seems to be right now the latest and greatest in terms of how people are trying to do that. And they're going to work with each other, right? You guys saw McClatchy recently start up, leverage the power of working together so they could, compete with the people that they didn't used to compete with in the past, and now do, right? And sort of combine their data. Hey, what can we do together to attract national dollars?
Yeah, I also think for the local sales side of it too, they're shifting. So the salespeople have to learn new information, and they're going over to companies like Pandora, who now they're selling on a local level. So the radio reps have decided to take that technology side to the other side, and you see companies like Hulu that'll probably start adding more salespeople on a local level. Who knows what Netflix is going to do on the video side? So what's going to happen with those local television reps? And I had a brief stint at CBS back in Baltimore, and one of their things that they do with insertion orders just is absolutely insane in how they do the process and put it in. So you put a contract in, you have to put it on an Excel spreadsheet, and then you hand it into the sales manager. The sales manager then hands it over to accounting. Accounting gives it to traffic. Then traffic re-inputs it into a system. And then it goes back to the rep to proof it, and then you make changes by hand. It's just ludicrous. And then the digital piece of it would go to another department, and then it gets sent up to national, and then national inserts everything down to the local side.
All right. By the way, if there's questions, please come up to the microphones or put it in the app, ask the questions, or Twitter. I'm happy to take those for each of these sets of three conversations we'll be having. So Dave, follow up there, you talk about the seller side, and I want to come back to that I/O kind of process and maybe ask Lorne to comment on that. So you also face SMBs, and do you walk in there with that Lumascape chart and say, it's kind of like, here's what we're going to do to you today? It's like,
No, but it's a great idea. Actually. I think I'm going to walk in there now with it. No, we talk to them about just ironing out what they're doing in the marketplace, because they are talking to every one of the sales reps that are just beating them over the head with what inventory is. So we use our experience because we come from advertising.com, we come from Comcast, so we've got a whole group that just really know how that market space works. And what we just saw was just such a huge hole in the SMB side that we can go in and just really attack that.
Right.
So.
And on the ad op side of this, it's supporting, that's like a key part of this whole ecosystem with programmatic. The horror story that Dave just outlined for how to do a search.
There's a disproportional amount of resources at every publisher, national and local, working on supporting programmatic because it's a mess, and compared to how much effort they're putting towards their sellers, right, who are bringing in more money, higher CPMs, and what a lot of the programmatic companies that are out there either supporting sellers by providing an SSP to allow them to put their inventory out to the market don't take into consideration everything that happens after that programmatic deal gets done, right? There's internal compliance, there's process, there's inventory, which is all getting sold out of the same pool, and publishers need to figure out a way to bring that all together. And that's something we're really focused on, and we believe that as this plays out, programmatic direct, automated guarantee, whatever you want to call it, will be the dominant way people buy. I think we're going to see RTB phase out a little bit, but I think that will exist. I think you're going to see people move off of open exchanges. But in the end, right now, people use Operative to manage their direct sales and an SSP to manage programmatic, and they literally sit there swivel chair all day long, right? They pull inventory and products out of Operative, they load them into their SSP, they get bought, and then they swivel chair back and create an order in Operative so it can go back through its native workflow. Yep. And so we're trying to bring that together by creating integrations to allow for coexistence, right? So yep. CROs and heads of sales at their own control and their own discretion could lever inventory into programmatic entities, and then as those deals take place in real time, pull that back in so that inventory is accounted for, yep. right? And then you could start to do real yield management across a single yield curve, and I think that's close. That's coming.
We have a question, yes.
Yeah, so do you guys see one of the biggest problems with going into programmatic being the cost associated with it? Like, for example, with myself, I can create an ad with an HTML5, an XML feed, and have a local ad. It'll target exactly based on their relative location and then show the dealer nearest to them. Only trouble is using something like a DCM or in combination with DBM, because DBM doesn't support this, I'm paying more in fees and premiums than I am to actually serve the ad, even though I can get more impressions at a better CPM. Like, when the hell is that going to actually lower so it's a better barrier of entry?
Well, I think Matt, are you here? Matt's going to come up and I'm sure that's something you can cover, but in general, and I know that's a lot what these guys do, it's a holistic approach, right? You can't go in it with the mentality of, oh, I'm going to be programmatic now and I'm going to just floor it on programmatic, right? You've got to look at the entire operation, you've got to look at the process, you've got to look at the compensation strategy, and then of course, what the margins are, right? So am I going to get enough revenue to cover all the people that need to get paid out in this process, right? And I think that's something that needs to go into consideration, but I think oftentimes people jump into it when they need the revenue, right? Yeah. At the end of the quarter, or trying to make the number, or people change inside of companies, and we're going all programmatic now. And
yeah, I actually think that the cost to have all those hands, I think that's part of your point, right? Is that there's a lot of hands out there in the process. I think we're a SaaS model, we don't take a margin, right? There's a lot of companies that are helping make it easier for the national to local marketer to do that with tools. There's still people involved, but I think it's a little bit more transparent than it has been. But I think Matt's going to speak to that as at panel number 2, so hopefully that'll help out.
Sure. Thank you.
Matt, you're welcome to come to the microphone here and bail us out. Come on. We're dying over here.
We're just doing a tease for panel 2. So Dave, from Balihoo, you work with national brands like the Wendy's and Aflac and New Balance and so on, trying to execute around local. So is programmatic good news, bad news, and different?
I think programmatic's the enabler, right? Yeah. So, I think the reality is that the marketing department doesn't want their store manager meeting with 38 people to talk about marketing. That's insanity, right? So the idea, though, for the national marketer to do, I have one retailer that says, I want to do 80% of the work in the corporate marketing office, and then let them do 20%, right? And that can be opt-in. They can build packages, do those sorts of things, and let their locations opt in, and then manage it via software in their marketing departments at at the national level. So, certainly the national brand wants to control, and so we're trying to develop ways for them to have tools that the local business can participate, but not put all the onus on that local business to figure it all out.
Right.
There's tools and an automation, and the programmatic piece just allows that to happen. So as we get more away from more people negotiated media, that creates that flexibility for the national brand to do it at that local level.
So probably good news. I mean, enabling that. I mean, yep.
So that it's not just the programmatic and the grid that you put up there. It's also the data that's empowering that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So the other piece is that when we look at it, we think of how do we auto set up campaigns, right? So we have an agent network, and they want to run a campaign for only their Hispanic-speaking or Spanish-speaking agents. So they click a button, and that powers an entire campaign just for them, and then it customizes the creative to the point that the last element that is specific to that agent, their headshot. All that's data-driven and data-enabled, and then the programmatic just makes it powerful and enabled.
So you're kind of facing national brands, and Dave, with your business, I mean, you touch different parts of the marketplace, but SMBs, I mean, a lot of times they're using programmatic not even knowing it. I mean, they'll place an order, and it may be a direct order that the salesperson processes through this automated workflow, and the SMB never knows that they touched the Lumascape.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of funny because we'll have clients of ours that are super shocked when they see an ad on Trivia Crack or one of the websites that are out there, and like WBAL, which is one of the local stations, because they've got so much remnant available, and we're just going in there and buying up what we can. The interesting thing, too, about the national side, coming back down to the local, for us, is we're finding some unique websites that are out there on a local level. Like one of the publishers that we're using right now is a high school sports website. So basically, they go and do every score from wrestling, track, you name it, like right after it happens. The coaches are actually texting back up to this website. So the parents are coming in, and we get lacrosse data, household income. We know where they live based off of the geo side of it. So there's some unique opportunities for the national to get really kind of granular with the data that's coming through on the local level.
Is there, from your perspective, I mean, you face a lot of publishers in your business. Anybody doing it particularly better, or any kind of lessons to be applied from what you're seeing people using the automated part of it and touching into the programmatic part of it?
Well, I think the publishers that have their act together have lots of pieces of their business integrated, and before they've taken on too much programmatic initiative, they've enabled their sellers. And that's my advice to people a lot, is that if your seller at the time of proposal or at the time while they're responding to an RFP can't in real time see what products or packages I have that match that advertiser's demographic, let's say, and see the amount of inventory available for that month and what the price is that the company wants them to charge, while they're on the phone, I wouldn't spend any time in programmatic until I could figure out how to empower my salesperson first. Right? And the companies that do this really well have empowered their sales team and then have used that model to try to bring it all together, right? And push harder on programmatic at the same time. And I think the other thing that people really aren't talking about, but it's really going to set programmatic buying back, is viewability, right?
Oh, yes.
And I don't want to make this a viewability panel, but if you think about it, by the end of the year, everything's going to be unviewable. Right? I want to know how much viewable inventory you have, right? That's something you got to solve for a seller before you can fix programmatic. And so when you talk about RTB and open exchanges, that might not matter that much, right? Maybe the CPMs will go down a little bit, if that's possible. But at the same time, they're going to, I want to do campaign management on viewable impressions, and I want you to bill me on viewable impressions. And this year there'll be a cliff. The cliff will probably last for the rest of the year. I'm fine with 70% of the ads being viewable, but anything lower than that, you're going to give me a make good. And I think that's probably fair for this year. I think the IAB agrees. But going into next year, everything's going to be transacted that way. So I think the CPMs and some of the ways that a lot of these programmatic direct companies are set up, and even a lot of companies that do RTB and closed exchanges, I don't know that their technology is really going to be ready to
Gotcha.
support programmatic in a viewable world. I think it's going to set everyone back a couple of years.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to have to bring a close to this first conversation. Please join me in thanking Dave, Lorne.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. All right, nice. And next panelist, please come up. So we're going to invite, in this next conversation, Sandy Lohr, SVP Sales for Advanced Digital, John McIntyre, founder, CEO of Sightly, and Matt Prohaska, CEO, principal of cleverly named Prohaska Consulting. So we'll do the same thing first, have each person kind of talk a little bit about themselves, their company, and kind of how they fit into the programmatic picture. And then we'll start into some questions and discussion among yourselves. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves as well. And then questions or challenges or answers from the audience, please join in the discussion. So let me start, Matt, with you. You're actually doing quite a bit in programmatic. We were talking before about kind of educating people and what does this all mean. You've been busy in that and consulting with people. Tell us about your view of the programmatic world.
A little bit of context. We have helped about 60 companies in the last year, publishers, agencies, advertisers, ad tech companies. The IAB is a client of ours, a couple investors. So we have an agnostic view and help with a combination of strategy or project work and helping companies build out their tech stack and all these pipes that you've heard about today, or actually putting people on the street and actually helping with programmatic ad sales specifically. To pick up on a couple of themes from the earlier conversation, one of the things, so of these 60 clients, about 60% of them are publisher side, as you can imagine, the sellers having a little bit more catch up to do because the programmatic marketplace has been dominated on the buy side and it's been so leveraged there that buyers have had a great advantage, basically BYOD, bringing their own data to the party and being able to cherry pick impressions without a lot of publishers really understanding for several years what was going on there in these so-called open exchanges. But what we've been doing is actually, to Lorne and Dave's point in the earlier panel, we've been actually helping teach sales teams how to sell programmatic direct themselves. So we count 16 publishers in the United States that have integrated programmatic into their offering with their sales teams, and we're responsible for 12 of them. So Univision and Kelley Blue Book and Twitch and Legacy.com and others. And so we're about to do a pretty substantial local TV initiative and working across all disciplines. So we're more optimistic than pessimistic, just for the overall ecosystem, not because it's part of our business and it's part of our point of view that's self-serving, but actually when you leverage the human beings to use our heads and our hearts to be more creative and proactive and strategic, all the transactional pain that we've had. I don't know how many of you have run ad ops teams that are crazy enough not to work with Operative, but tough job, right? And that's why Lauren's done a great job for more than a dozen years. But that pain is difficult. So being able to shift those hours over and again leverage the human beings for what they're good at doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so one of the numbers I showed was of the inventory types that's really going to show significant growth this year. And beyond is video. And so, John, tell us about what's going on with programmatic and video and how Sightly's positioned in all
Sure.
of this.
So, again, Sightly is a video advertising platform. If it would be on the Lumascape, that was a display Lumascape, but if you had a video one up, you would see it would be basically in the demand side platform side. And a lot of good conversations in that first group that spoke around both really what is programmatic and how's it being applied and what does it enable. And again, I think the best description was as an enabler. And that's what we view our platform as. We're an enabler because in the end it is people making decisions about creative, about messaging. And so really our goal is to take that to the nth degree in terms of video and how we leverage that with programmatic in the sense that it is an enabler. It allows us to get to the local, and eventually the individual when you start thinking about what campaigns are going to be like in the future, where very personalized messaging delivered to very specific audience members at the right time, right place type of mantra that you see, and programmatic is simply the highway that you will drive upon to get there. And there's certainly a lot of things that will be fun to talk about that needs to evolve in the programmatic world for that reality to be achieved.
Interesting. So, Sandy, you have inventory that you're selling. You're with a publisher. We talked a little bit, I think Lorne mentioned Advance. And are you selling programmatically, or what's your view of the world here?
Yes. Our view of the world is yes, we follow the money, and very strategic. And so yes,
Follow the money.
Yeah.
I wrote that down.
So as a publisher site, and we kind of look at it, I know Dave Walker was talking about from the CMO side to go from macro to micro. We're kind of the opposite. We're a bunch of hyper-local sites with a national footprint. So we roll up, and that means from our end, we deal with programmatic and in terms of a waterfall where we have our direct sold inventory, then we have our private marketplace, and then we have our open exchange. So our challenge, which we've embraced the disruption, is to really try and move from the opportunity and the value in each of those segments and have the money and the opportunity meet that. So we try very hard to move folks from multiple tiers and to be able to serve them in all those tiers. We have several that are actually playing in campaigns strategically, looking at how they do different things in each of those areas. So our goal is to move into Middle Earth, into our private marketplace from the open exchange and try and help more brands do that. And I think what we bring uniquely in terms of value to that is just we've become much more of a data company. Our DMP is extremely important. We've invested heavily in trying to differentiate what we can do with programmatic by not selling and make it be space and impressions, but really provide the data points to help target that audience properly and provide a differentiating value there.
And that's, follow the money and value. I want to follow up a little bit with you on that, Sandy. The data side is so important. We're going to be talking more about that on the third panel. Segment 2, unlocking programmatic's potential. So there's value that's being created. Is that right for the advertiser as well as the publisher? How is programmatic creating more value in this whole process, do you see?
Well, from our side, I'll just talk about it from the advertiser side. Certainly, it puts them in control. So programmatic buying has led to transparency and to control, much more flexibility and efficiencies. And so that's a no-brainer that they need to be there, and we need to be there too. We want to be easy to do business with, and we want to make sure that we can win in that area as well. I think from the publisher side, there's certainly an opportunity for us. We just saw the stats from the CMO study that was done that there's this big gap for local. So when you look at national brands, and we can actually be exposing our inventory to more brands nationally through programmatic. So there's a win for us to be able to help and play in that space and close that gap.
It's a huge amount of upside. I'm sure you see it with your clients as well. The number of national advertisers that will self-select certain DMAs and bid higher if there's an ad call that comes in from any publisher that says that I've identified this particular user is coming from this region. To be able to have local publishers that are obviously concentrated in that market be able to deliver that quickly, you're able to expose yourself to national advertisers at a much more efficient rate than ever before. So huge upside there. Right?
It is, and really, this was touched on in the previous group, but I want to emphasize it, is that the first generation of programmatic, and I really do believe we're in the very early stages. We're not quite Neanderthals, but we're pretty close where we are in programmatic. But even this first stage has enabled scale. And what scale is enabling is the ability for platforms, certainly like Sightly and many others, to deliver campaigns at a much a greater micro level. That might be location based, which is obviously a huge challenge for the multi-location brands, but even down to the audience. And I think if it's a tool that's used properly and the correct data, and you're going to get more into that in the third group here, is applied, that's the value that's being created. It is, again, that enabler that's going to create the ability for you to begin truly leveraging data to do targeting that has never really been done before.
Is that, from the, when you're talking to advertisers, you used the word waterfall. There's so much, there's a lot of complexity. It's automated, it's efficient, it's scalable, it's leverageable, but there is complexity and just the different kinds of inventory types. Salespeople used to go and say, you're going to buy some ad inventory and here's what it is and here's what you get and here's our promise of performance. Now you go in there waterfall. That's a new word for advertisers probably. How do you have to educate the sales side, but you also have to educate the client side. How are you doing that, Sandy?
How are we doing that? Not well enough. But
Who is?
I think for us it's just having conversations, and I think the challenge with programmatic is it takes that conversation away. I mean, we've spent decades on perfecting a sales process that puts us in front of a customer to learn what they're trying to solve for, and programmatic changes that. And so what we have found, and it may be preliminary and it may push us aside eventually in terms of having direct reps, but from the national side, we still are having some of those conversations that are talking about those different levels. I wouldn't say that we're educating anybody. I think we're trying to learn as we go. So I think it's really a two-way street. Hopefully we're bringing something to the conversation, but I think we're learning.
Yeah, Matt.
I'd say the good news is that a lot of the buyers are starting to educate themselves as well. So the same way that you heard in the first group that programmatic has historically been this siloed thing that either exists from the operations team because they're plugging pipes into these exchanges the same way they plugged into 17 different ad networks over the last 16 years. The same way it's been siloed there, it's been siloed on the buy side as well, where these agency trading desks have been separate divisions under these major holding companies. What's starting to happen now is that with about half of the big six, you're starting to see integration take place, where the traditional media planners who have been sending the insertion orders and doing all that manual legwork, but at least understand how to put together a media plan, understand the value of the contextual relevance of a Syracuse.com or any of the other properties out here, are now being combined in the case of Viviki folding all their people into their large agencies across Publicis. That automation now and being able to apply audience data is now being integrated into that process, and the skill sets, it's a little squishy, technical term. It's squishy right now, but it's getting better every single week.
Add that to me, a list of things that
that's
programmatic
a
means.
trademark. Prohaska
You got it.
We own that. But yeah, so that's starting to happen. So unfortunately for sellers, the buyers are again getting a little bit of a head start here. So it's more of a matter. The advantage, frankly, for local sellers is that because more often than not they're used to selling a broad variety of products, whether it's search or television or print with, that being able to bring in programmatic as just a new way of doing business. We've predicted that for a couple of years now the word's going to probably go away in a couple of years just because it's going to be the way we all do things. So there's an opportunity culturally to have smaller organizations at a local level or reps that represent multiple properties be able to get coached up and integrated a lot faster than massive, big, entitled, very heavy traditional sales teams on a national or global scale that have been more moving tectonic plates. Some are starting to move, and we've helped a few, but much more of an ability to adapt quicker at the local level.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's 100% correct here in that, programmatic's a tool, and it's going to be part of this lexicon. Just going to be, it's going to be just wrapped up into really what is just targeting, right? And I believe, Sandy had mentioned about, hey, the people will remain or not. I think it's critical that they remain, because in the end, programmatic is stupid. It's a dumb tool, and I don't mean that it's disparaging. I mean it's just a go get, go fetch type of bidding tool.
So if you were being not disparaging, what would it sound like?
Yeah, exactly.
Version 1.0.
1.0.
Dumb tool.
Yeah,
the
version
open
1.0.
exchange, real-time bidding. Go fish the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly, and a lot of people still employ that, and that's changing. And version 2.0 is definitely well on its way. But regardless, these are systems that have to be given instructions of what to do. You still need to say, is it a good goal? Because for programmatic, if you tell it to do something wrong, it'll do it wrong really fast and really efficiently, but it's still wrong, right? And so what you have to have is an understanding of the goals of the advertiser. You have to understanding of the impact of the creative and the messaging. And those are things that aren't going to go away. And really, the programmatic, as it gets deployed, again, with data, into the second and third generations of the algorithms that are out there to be used, start to have an impact. It gives you even more power with that message, because now it's not just a message that you're trying to figure out how to get to the broadest scope of everybody. It fundamentally changes how multi-location brands, or any advertiser for that matter, thinks about speaking to their audience. Because it's now not just the audience, it's lots of different pieces of that audience.
And that's the next big cultural shift. Once the buying teams get integrated and programmatic's just a part of everyday life, and the sales teams do the same thing, the dynamic between media and creative is next. So I was at BBDO as a fetus a million years ago buying national television, and we were pretty well known for doing Super Bowl creative and television ads there. But taking an art director who's made millions and done very, very well with Sight, Sound, Motion and saying, okay, you now have 3,000 targeting parameters to work with. The president of Zenith Optimedia told me a few months ago, I have 4,000 targeting parameters and I'm handed 4 creative once to be able to use. And so it's a little limiting to take advantage of that whole right place, right ad, right.
Yep.
The right ad part is a little more limited.
Agreed.
So, how can you leverage dynamic creative optimization, a little bit of software, but how can you get the potential of having, now being able to have contextual environment plus audience targeting equal 3 and putting that message out in front without having people, working as, junior level till 2 a.m. every single night forever kind of thing, right? So, there's a happy medium in there somewhere. We just got to move the ball a little bit.
Right. So I want to, Lorne had mentioned the word viewability, and I guess fraud is in there somehow too.
Separate issues.
So I mean, you live in video. Let's start with you, John. I mean, does that keep you up at night?
So Matt is absolutely right. Viewability and fraud are two different issues. Just viewability, obviously, simply can it be viewed by IAB standards, which I think are absolutely ridiculous, that you have to be able to see half of the video for 2 seconds, and that counts as an impression that you get charged for. Horrific. And fraud is obviously very
Should only
different.
be 1 second?
Yeah, exactly. I would argue the whole thing. You should have to watch the whole thing before you get charged. I'm biased because that's how we charge, but
be awesome at TV and print and radio work that way.
Yes,
too.
exactly. Yeah. Well, they do.
It's a great standard to go to. The rates hopefully will go up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so from that, fraud obviously being bots and other things getting in there and running up those. The challenges I think you see in that market are real, but will also, particularly when you start doing, again, lots of things faster, lots of going at volume, going at scale. From a viewability standpoint, it's a matter of again, it could be as simple as changing how people are billed in the process. Right? Viewability isn't a concern when you're not paying for it unless they've actually watched the entire ad and or some portion of it that's greater than just a glimpse. That becomes less an issue. Fraud is a bigger issue that's going to be more challenging technically to address. But again, there's lots of great third-party verification companies out there that allow the advertisers to see really what is being done.
You're seeing less of the one-by-one video player shenanigans that used to happen 6-7 years ago, right? That's good.
And the industry's cleaning itself up because it has to clean itself up. And if you have inventory that gets rated frequently as bad, you're going to go away, and you are. And so certainly as publishers are going to need to be very aware of what their inventory looks like and how it's managed, and they're going to have to make sure that they keep it clean. Otherwise, their inventory goes away.
So go ahead, Cindy, sorry.
I was just going to say, John's a partner of ours, but we've seen the marketplace support, especially on the national side, a premium for viewability too. And even in private marketplace and programmatically, the capabilities to be able to do that and seeing that CPMs go up accordingly. So I think the capability is there, the marketplace is embracing it, and we just have to be smart about making sure we offer that up.
Yep. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of leading out the programmatic practice at the New York Times, and about a year and a half ago, we completely changed our site so that there's a lazy load or ads are actually loading to make sure they're fully in view, and you're seeing a lot of scrambling going on right now with designs across a lot of major publishers to be able to jury rig things so that it can be 100% viewable as possible, which is a fantastic move. And when we get there, which, as Lorne said, I think, there will be some tipping points. People will go away around holidays, and then I think in 2016 it'll be just sort of, people will assume, oh, well, of course we're buying on a VCPM basis from now on, right? I think hopefully the exchanges will get a little better of being able to report off of that. I think billing systems and everyone else will get out of the T's and C's mess that is very familiar to us old-timers, like how we used to debate ad serving discrepancies, right? Where, oh, we have 15% off, and you waste
your number?
so much time, right? Just bitching about $700 on a 200,000, stupid. Just do something else. So we'll get there on viewability as well.
So in 1 minute, Sandy, tell us the truth. No, I'm just kind of curious. You've kind of gated and segmented inventory, and then the way you're going to the market with that. I guess from my question is like from a revenue maximization, yield management kind of perspective. Are your CPMs going up? Are you actually being able to achieve more revenue by bringing inventory maybe properly valued with some of the data layer and presented in a more segmented and targeted fashion to buyers to connect them with audiences? I mean, so are you bringing more value to your buyers as a result of programmatic and all automation and the data layer brings into it?
Yeah, the answer is yes, yes, yes.
I knew we could do it in less than a minute.
So, yes, we have, because of our unique opportunity to work with our sister companies of Condé Nast and now American City Business Journals as well, the type of first-party data that we bring to the table, and I know Dave was talking about it with this last panel, that when you look at who we are as news and information sites, and we're the 8th largest news and information company in the country behind CNN and Yahoo, et cetera. So you have all this data, and what do we do with it to provide value and get paid for it? And so when we are smart about offering that up and making that part of our private marketplace opportunity, and that's a decision that was just made recently because we have this disruption. We have 700 local sellers with feet on the street in all our markets. What do we do to differentiate? I mean, are we going to hold things back? And our decision was no, that whether it's rich media opportunities, Rising Star, whether it's our data points, whether it's anything that we can bring to the table and offer, the difference is commitment. So when we're in the programmatic space, there is no commitment. Yeah. And so we've invited you to come play, we've opened the door, we've given you access, and it's up to you. You're in complete control, and so we sit back and wait. And so so for us, I think it's the challenge of how to make all of these work best, to your point of yield. And we, at the end of the day, have a whole lot of inventory, and we have to make sure that the value is there in each of these ways. So you get what you pay for. It's simple from our end. We try and keep it simple. And we try to open everything up so we don't hold back and make it as easy to do business with. And hopefully that's the winning formula. If not, we have to change along the way.
Sounds like a good story to me. Sandy, John, and Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as we bring on our next conversationalists, do you want to stand up and take a 7th inning stretch, get the blood flowing again, been sitting all day? Maybe we'll break out into a flash crowd dance. Can we cue the music? Everybody break out into dancing. Okay, so we're going to have a little different perspective here. The people in this conversation thread, future state, what's local, what is local in a programmatic world, and the rules are, you can also go back to the other 2 topics as well if you like. Okay. But we have Jason Dailey, who is SVP Search and Performance for Mediavest, Randa, venture partner for Transform, and David Staas, president of NinthDecimal. So we're going to get a little bit of a different perspective. We have an agency person up here who can talk about that perspective. And a lot of what's going on with programmatic is the signaling that allows us to target, segment and target and get closer to attribution models and the journey to purchase, all the different elements in there. So I know that David and Randa have a lot to offer there to make Jason happy to know that his clients are being well served. So we'll talk about some of those threads there, but we'll start off first. David, tell us a little bit about what does NinthDecimal mean, and what are your thoughts around programmatic generally?
Yeah, sure. So NinthDecimal, we're a mobile audience intelligence company. We have a very unique and comprehensive understanding of consumers because we sit at the combination of look at how they go about their daily lives in the digital world. We combine that with how people go about their daily lives in the physical world. And mobile is that piece that links that together. When you're using that mobile device, it generates a location signal, provides the context of the world around you, converts it into a digital signal so we can marry it with other digital data. We see probably about 200 billion data points a month from about 120 million devices here in the US alone. And we take all of that data and we provide it through a number of ways out into the market. One is a direct sold business working directly with agencies to do highly richly targeted campaigns through our own mobile DSP. We also have a measurement platform, provides offline attribution of, hey, if you saw that ad, did you ultimately go to the store? We use that to measure both mobile, online, and even offline channels. We provide deep audience insights and analytics. From a programmatic perspective, we're taking all that data, we're enabling that, those audience segments on the leading mobile programmatic platforms, first company in the space to do that. So we're really at the very beginning of mobile programmatic. And because there's a lot of challenges and complexities kind of in those programmatic platforms, they're not really designed very much for a local approach to the market. So we've created our own sort of local programmatic solution that takes those capabilities, brings those down onto a very hyper-local level as well.
Cool, thank you. And Randa, you've had a couple of different really interesting roles in the world here. I mean, we are now incredibly interested, definitely want to hear about that, but you've also been on the media side. So tell us a bit about your history and about Transform and where you are in this whole programmatic, matrix.
I was also one of those sellers on the street for a long time.
Yes.
And ended up at a corporate role at Fisher Communications and involved running our interactive division and running all revenue. And from that, I ended up going to Transform, which is a data services company primarily. And what we do is we take data to help our customers understand their customers and their marketplaces. And what we will do is create growth strategies for them. So our focus is really on top line, on growth, and on improvement. And we will model those, test them again with data, take those winning strategies and launch them or develop them and launch them with technology. We have developed a local advertising genome, and really what that is online, offline attribution down to the local level. Because as we know, marketing is becoming very personalized, it's becoming one-to-one, and that's all local. So something like a news story, news is always local, it's happening locally somewhere, so is reaching a customer. It's a local customer. And so we really look at it as the Moneyball approach to marketing.
Great, thank you. And Jason, you've also got an interesting perspective, kind of switching roles a little bit for a long time. You're at Microsoft running search. Now you're with an agency. So tell us our story, and then what you're doing with Mediavest also. But then, is programmatic really just what search has been doing for a long time, or is it kind of quantitatively or qualitatively different?
Yeah, so in Mediavest, which is a media and content planning and buying agency, essentially runs search and social. And I would say that, programmatic has its home and its foundation in the elements of search, but it's really gone beyond that. And when we think about programmatic, we kind of think about it in terms of three phases. So the first is kind of what a lot of us was said before around automation and the removing of paperwork. Phase two is then, being able to real-time bid for impressions or audience segments. And then phase three, kind of where the pot of gold is really being able to go beyond cookies and identify and target specific individual users and consumers across devices. So that's kind of the holy grail that we're all trying to get to, is not the fact that, when you're looking at 100 cookies that you may serve an ad against, you may only be reaching actually 10 people. So to figure out how can you reach a specific individual, again, across devices is where the future is. And the big distinction between, the search and the programmatic world is really how data is enabling that transition. So
the kind of reaching that specific individual and the one-to-one marketing, I mean, is that literal truth? I mean, you really want to, for your clients,
literally
specific
yes.
people, or like tranches of people that look like this?
Excuse me. No, I want to reach, Jason Dailey, who lives in New York City and eats this kind of food and has this kind of purchase intent. And it really does all come down to data, understanding first-party data that we work with a lot of data partners, Axiom being one, who allow us to take clients' data or other data that exists and then narrow that down to specific individuals. And I think to the point or the question that was asked before, in that world, you may end up paying more on a CPM basis, but the hope is that you're not spending as much because you're not having to buy as many impressions.
Right, so Sandy loves that you're willing to pay more for CPMs. Thank you very much. So, I mean, the offline to online kind of attribute, or online-offline attribution, or whichever way you want to go, depending upon the media inventory and then what you're trying to establish, a lot of that results down to what's going on the mobile device. They do the cross-channel kind of thing, and we have perfect knowledge about what people are doing on that mobile device. We can track them across different screens right down to the mobile device, right?
Sure. I mean, what's interesting about mobile is you have less of that issue that you just described with the cookies because your mobile device tends to be a very personal device. It tends to be very one-to-one ownership. And so if you're understanding what's happening with that device, it's very much a one-to-one relationship. That device can be looked at those location signals. So if you're a Chili's and you want to engage people that frequently dine at Chili's, you know you're getting something that's frequently dining at those restaurants. Conversely, if you're Olive Garden, you want to get people who frequently dine at Chili's and convert them. It's, so lots of ways that you can, tap into that very unique signal. And it's that's the nice part of that physical world behavior being combined with the digital behavior gives you that richness because you can layer on top of those signals all the information. Jason, you were also talking about CRM data, what kind of content you're consuming, what TV shows you're watching, the products that you're buying, whether they're online or offline product purchases. So you can get very rich very quickly once you understand a device ID and once you understand a location signal from those devices. You can marry tremendous amounts of data together to do a lot of different things from targeting and measurement.
Right. So if you don't mind, let's have a little bit of fun here. The advertising genome. Jason, is that in your client's budget? Do they have a line item for advertising genome?
Not yet, but no, tell me more about it. We'll see.
Yeah, come on, let's make a sale. Make a sale here.
We coined it today as the AMP, right? The attribution,
exactly right.
Right, this morning, the attribution marketing platform. But basically, we look at every channel, and we'll come back to you. You have to be very transparent with us. We have to know exactly what your goals are. And I'm talking down to cash register goal. So if you really want to achieve one-to-one marketing, there has to be a greater level of transparency and data coming back and forth in real time in order for you to be able to move and to change a buy as it goes through. What we're really talking about with this is not talking about placing a buy anymore. We're talking about buying an audience. So it's a very different conversation and a very different approach. And I think for local, what's so important is this will allow people to come in as sellers more credibly with more information because you can put that information into it and understand exactly how many cars the car dealer should sell. Working back from, so you want to sell cars. Okay, let's look at your whole media plan, not just what I'm here to sell. Let me show you how and where you should place your money. Now, granted, it's going to take some time to build that because we're going to need previous information. Let's say a year or two has to be stored, it has to be accessed, and then we put it into a very easy-to-use dashboard for that actual client to access. And it's a very powerful tool. We've proven it. It's not beta. It's something that we have done. And then we became predictive with it for a national client, market by market. We were also able to demonstrate the lift from television when we case study. This is what it looked like with television. This is what it looked like without television against the digital marketing. So it is online, offline. It does include radio. It does include any channel you can think of.
And and I know that you do this too, David, but I mean, the transparency you're talking about is sales data.
Yes.
The brands have to give the sales data, and we were talking about this earlier. Their definition of a sale is to the store, not necessarily to the customer. But you've modeled that and predicted it with really good accuracy, right?
Yes, we started with 95% accuracy. Now, granted, we had 2 years worth of data, and we were able to say if this is your sales goal, this is where you need to place your media by channel. And we were 95% the first month or so, and we're higher now. And
then you can take that to help Jason with his clients figure out mix. I mean, media mix models and weights. Yes. And then is that, so are you going to buy advertising genome yet?
Maybe.
Maybe, all right. Well, we'll have David help convince you too then. So, I mean, you and what Randa are doing kind of work hand in hand a little bit.
It is interesting. We're looking at using that location signal as a form of offline attribution. So, foot traffic into a store becoming a really, powerful metric. And what's nice about you going beyond those traditional engagement metrics, I always talk about going beyond a click, but you're not looking at things like video completes, time spent in a rich media, ad unit, secondary actions on a landing page. You're going beyond what happens when the person is done with that advertising experience, and then does that transform their behavior later on in the physical world? Are they incrementally going into the store and being able to use that as a metric to tie back against whether it's mobile advertising, whether it's online, whether you're measuring, hey, if somebody saw my TV commercial, did that drive incremental foot traffic to a store? And what's happening is you're able to use these basically mobile, not so much as a media channel, but mobile is the glue that combines all these different media channels. Mobile can be used to measure exposure to an out-of-home billboard, and for a new TV show, and did that drive tune-in to that TV show? Did more people that were exposed to the billboard watch the show than people that weren't? And again, it's when you begin to connect the dots across the ecosystem, you really begin to get into some very new ways of measuring forms of media that have never before been possible, whether it's something newer like mobile or something more traditional like TV.
Yep. So in the chart there, we have DSP, we have SSP, we have DMP, and like Randa said, we want to add in this AMP, the attribution modeling or marketing platform. Have we made a sale yet? Advertising genome? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for us because we need to obviously look at the marketplace and identify the best in breed services and platforms for our clients. But we are looking at this space. So, last year, Publicis just acquired Run, which is a mobile DSP and DMP. That gives us transparency into the marketplace in terms of what people are really paying. But it also allows us to start to connect those dots because we can take the data from our customers and see what people are actually doing on those devices. So the lines are becoming, blurry.
So, so through acquisitions and in of companies and people, more data science people on the agency side trying to work with all the data, model it, and then you have kind of vertical experts to understand what the data mean, what questions to ask and stuff. Where are you seeing the future headed for Mediavest, any kind of the agencies with all the stuff we're talking about?
I think you're going to see one from the people side, which has been talked a lot about today, just in terms of the skill sets.
Yeah.
So we're focusing on skill sets of the future, so people who understand analytics, who understand data, who aren't afraid of math. I think you're going to see, again, the blurring of the line between content creation and media as well. So, we go through all this work again to make very locally relevant, targeted ads, and to the point that was brought up in the last panel, I believe, by Matt, is what's the whole point of finding the specific individual user if you're just going to serve them a generic ad? So I think that's a lot of ways that are coming together. And then we're also using, again, going back to mobile, we just announced the expansion of our consumer insights research platform, which is based in mobile. So it allows us to understand attitudes, media consumption patterns, but because it's based on mobile, we know where those people are experiencing those things.
Nice. So the future from your perspectives, Randa and David, what do you think we're going to be expecting to come out to make the world a better place?
I think you're going to see a lot more video in programmatic.
Yeah.
This year, I think according to eMarketer, it grew over 200%. Now, granted, small market, big number, but you're going to see more and more inventory coming in from over the top. Over the top is really pretty exciting, but you're also going to see local broadcasters begin to experiment with this, which I think is great. And I think it will start with their, let's say, their overnight inventory, which, frankly, it may be overnight, and the sellers themselves don't see as much value necessarily, or it's harder to move that inventory. But I think that if you look at the numbers, you can see that it can take 10 or 12 cable channels to make up what that overnight has. And if you're buying audience, you don't care. You're buying somebody to create an action or a conversion or a sale. It doesn't matter that it's overnight.
Right.
So I think that's a good place for them to start, and then we'll see more and more other inventory join.
Right. That was the forecast is showing video as the inventory type of advertising, definitely on the growth. Tomorrow morning we'll have Kristen from Hulu talking about what's going on from their perspective in local. It's a pretty fast-growing category. David, what's up in the future from your perspective?
Well, so I agree with the comment around video. I think that's definitely playing out in mobile as well. With some of the things we're seeing a lot of increased demand for. We've put our audience segments and a lot of our data up on TubeMogul and Brightroll, Yahoo, and a lot of the video platforms in mobile. So I do think that's going to be a continuing growth area in programmatic. I think what's interesting, though, when you look at mobile, there's sort of this waterfall effect where a lot of stuff happens sort of on the direct sold mobile businesses, like a lot of interesting capabilities that agencies have the ability to take advantage of. And then those begin to migrate into programmatic second. And then from there, you need to figure out how you scale those things in a way that simplifies the buying process so it can work very effectively on a programmatic local level as well. So I see those things moving over time. The innovations that are happening now sort of on that, on the agency level around very sophisticated targeting capabilities, a lot of new things such as shopper marketing segments, being enabled on the programmatic platform, so you'll be able to go on and buy somebody who frequently shops at Walmart and buy that, whether it's online or mobile, somebody who drinks coffee at Starbucks, somebody who eats at McDonald's. And I think the measurement stuff we've been talking about, a lot of that is going to become programmatically enabled very, very quickly. You're going to see that beginning to emerge. And then those omni-channel capabilities will begin to move into programmatic as well. I think these all have a timeline. We're talking probably over a 12 to 18-month window. But when you think on a local level, one of the big channels that people spend a lot of time on is direct mail. And now you'll be able to start measuring direct mail. When you can do that programmatically as a local marketer, as a franchise owner, understanding, hey, that direct mail piece, did that drive greater traffic to my stores? Did that increase my revenues? Did that work best in conjunction with mobile or another media channel or standalone? That's what we're going to start seeing in programmatic over a 12 to 18 month period.
Yeah, I mean,
Rick,
yes, for the future.
I got one more.
Yeah, go for it.
I just thought of it. So
then we have a question too.
Because I think the future is also going to be not knowing where someone is today, which is what a lot about local targeting is about, but where are they going to be tomorrow in the future? Walmart's one of the biggest competitors is a dollar store. So I'd rather know that person is going to go to that dollar store once a week and hit them before they actually get into the parking lot.
That's awesome. Yes, please.
I heard what I thought was nervous laughter from the last panel when they talked about the idea of programmatic getting into print and getting into real television, if you will. And I heard what you said earlier about I want to buy the individual. I want to, and so I'm trying to put that together with what Randa said with local broadcasters beginning to implement programmatic in overnight. And so I was kind of looking at this and going, because I was assuming based on the conversation up to that point that what we're really talking about is online and mobile display ads. But if you look forward and you think about the windowing, if you will, is it 12 to 18 months for banner and display ads on mobile devices and the web? How does this translate to broadcasting or cable or other things in terms of timelines? Are we on a months, years, decades?
Well, I'd say from a digital and online perspective, it's happening today. From an addressable TV perspective, that's actually happening today as well. We can get to the household, not necessarily to the specific individual, obviously, but the challenge there is just going to be scale, and I expect over the next 18 to 24 months, that's going to open up significantly as well.
Wide Orbit is already, as I understand it, they have a platform that will allow for this. So I think what you're going to see is broadcast experimentation. I don't think that in the next 6 months or even 12 that it will really be there for offline, but I think the experimentation is going to start now, and we're going to start to see video move into it. It should be so important and lucrative to change that conversation on a local level for television stations to begin to talk about being addressable and talk about buying an audience or really delivering an audience to an advertiser, to a brand, to whomever, to sell a car, to get them into McDonald's, using that audience to do that. I do think it's a ways away.
What we've seen is obviously the satellite providers have embraced it because the cable companies don't have a hard time selling locally because they can do that really easily. If you're Dish, then you can't target to Phoenix or New York.
But you can get a free gun, we learned here.
Yes. But so they're really embracing this idea of addressable media, and I think the other ones are going to follow as well.
Right. Yeah, and Randa, of course, you have an awesome background in local television, and Sam, who asked the question as a Chief Technology Officer for NAB, and Sam, just to give you a little kudos here, I mean, you're forming this whole program around a digital officer at broadcast companies, trying to get them into this world a little bit more deeply, because it's coming, or here, as Jason's saying. So, I mean, a lot of stuff happening there. So we've run out of time for this panel. We have a couple things coming up before I dismiss you. Just to let you know, we're going to go into a break, the Best of Dallas Networking Reception, back in the exhibit hall. That's sponsored by Telmetrics. After that, we have another event, the Country Casino Day 2 After Hours Bash. That's going to be in the ballroom on the 4th floor. That's sponsored by Local Site Summit and Moon Valley Software. Back here tomorrow morning, 7:30 breakfast. That's going to be sponsored by Matchcraft. So please join me in thanking our panelists for our third conversation, and hopefully get a lot more out of programmatic.